Verse number, one second, sorry. Verse numbers, Prabhu?
No, not yet. Not yet.
What is the verse number? I should bring it up. 3, 4?
3, 4, 14.
14, right? Yeah. Okay. I did the other place. Do you see it, right?
No, I can see it, Prabhu. Thank you. So let me know when I can get started.
You can start, Prabhu.
Okay, recording is on.
Yes.
Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Iti yadrukta paramasya pumsa pratikshananugraha bhajanoham nehottaro maskalitaksharastam munchan chuchan pranjalir abhabhashe kunu kunvishate pada saroja bhajam sudurlabhorteshu chaturshvapiha tathapinaham prabhnomi bhuman bhavat padamboja nishevanutsukaha. Synonyms: iti, thus; adrata, being favored; ukta, addressed; paramasya, of the supreme; pumsaha, personality of Godhead; pratikshana, every moment; anugraha, bhajana, object of favor; aham, myself; neha, affection; uttha, eruption; roma, hairs on the body; skalita, slackened; akshara, of the eyes; tam, that; munchan, smearing; suchaha, tears; pranjali, with folded hands; abhabhashe, said. Translation: Uddhava said, O Vidura, when I was thus favored at every moment by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and thus addressed by him with great affection, my words failed. Let me repeat that. Uddhava said, O Vidura, when I was thus favored at every moment by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and addressed by him with great affection, my words failed in tears, and the hairs on my body erupted. After smearing my tears, I, with folded hands, spoke like this. A translation for the next verse. O my Lord, devotees who engage in the transcendental loving service of your lotus feet have no difficulty in achieving anything within the realm of the four principles of religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. But, O Great One, as far as I'm concerned, I have preferred only to engage in the loving service of your lotus feet. So, reading the purports, let me try and pull that up here. Having a few technical difficulties here, so please bear with me. Wonderful.
I'm sharing the screen as well, Prabhu. If you're able to see, small screen,
Unfortunately, yeah, it is.
small screen.
Uh, I can, yeah, I know what I did here. Yeah, no, the problem is my internet connection. So give me just a second here. I'm almost there. Okay. So 14 and 15. Yeah, so that's my purport to 14. So moving on to 15, the purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. And the purport Prabhupada says, those who are associated with the Lord in the Vaikuntha planets achieve all the bodily features of the Lord and appear to be the same as Lord Vishnu. Such liberation is called Sarupya Mukti, which is one of the 5 kinds of liberation. The devotees engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord never accept the Sayuja Mukti, or merging in the rays of the Lord, called the Brahma Jyoti. The devotees can achieve not only liberation, but any success in the realm of religiosity, economic development, or sense gratification up to the standard of the demigods in the heavenly planets. By such a pure devotee as but such a pure devotee as Uddhava refuses to accept all such facilities. A pure devotee wants simply to engage in the service of the Lord and does not consider his own personal benefit. Let me read that again. Prabhupada is saying a pure devotee wants simply to engage in the service of the Lord and does not consider his own personal benefit. Om Ajnanatimrandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swa Padantikam Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyev Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on a Sunday morning here. The weather is still trying to decide which way to go. Do I want to be warm? Do I want to be cold? Do I want to still be in the winter? Do I want to start moving towards the summer? Am I in the spring? So all those decisions are being made uh, by the supreme, by the superior authorities here. But I certainly appreciate you taking the time to be on the call with us this morning. It may be a short class, but again, there are some important takeaways I'd like for you to pay attention. There are some wonderful takeaways that are implied in um, these 2 verses, and so beautifully, described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, as it is said by Uddhava, who is one of the most phenomenal devotees of the Lord, very, very close. He's such a close associate of the Lord, and so much is to be said. I mean, we could talk. In fact, we could easily, go through the Bhagavatam and refer to all the various references that talk so highly and glorify so much about Uddhava as one of the closest associates of the Lord of Krishna. So, in the first text, he is basically spellbound in the presence of Krishna. And just to give you a little context, okay, so we are in Canto 3, we are in Chapter 4, and we're reading texts 14 and 15 today. And the setting is where Uddhava is speaking to Vidura, and he's recounting his, experience just in the recent past for him, where he noticed that Krishna was meditating very intensely, very solemnly on the banks of River Saraswati. and he's also, uh, gaining, the attendance of Krishna. So he walks up to him, and he's also taking his instructions. And when I say his, I'm talking about Lord Krishna's instructions as to what Uddhava should be doing next. And Krishna is basically telling him, "Look, I'm winding up my time here on planet Earth, and I want you to head to Badrikashrama and let others know as well." Right. And so this is at that stage, right, where Uddhava is choking with emotion. His closest associate, the Lord of his life, someone that he's been devoted to all the way from when he was a little child. Throughout his life, he's been dedicated to serving the Lord in his heart, even though he's been in Mathura with Kamsa. His mind and his love for Krishna hasn't diminished. In fact, it has only grown. So Uddhava is considered one of the greatest devotees of the Lord outside of Vrindavan. And so here he's standing with folded hands, and he's completely choking with emotion. His words are not even coming out. He's not able to be the eloquent self that he is otherwise. And he's completely, tongue-tied in the presence of the Lord. And he's experiencing all the symptoms of a pure devotee. His hairs are standing, his eyes are filled, swelling with tears. And he's looking upon Krishna with the greatest of affection, right? And Krishna is right there in front of him physically, right? So he's choking even more, and he's unable to even speak a few words. So he has to gather himself. He has to bring himself back into the presence of where he is there with Krishna. And then he starts to speak. So this text is basically describing that wonderful feeling that a pure devotee experiences when he or she is thinking of Krishna. And in this case, Uddhava is right there in the presence of Krishna. What to speak of even trying to imagine, even trying to remember Krishna. Krishna is right there in front of him. So it is an overwhelming feeling that Uddhava is experiencing, and that's what Sukadeva Goswami is describing to us, in turn telling us how it was. And here he's talking about how Uddhava is relating it to Vidura and explaining to him, this is what happened. He's embarrassed, he's choking with emotion, he is also, expressing his love and intense affection for Krishna. So that is a beautiful feeling, and we all want to have that. We all want to experience that kind of love and affection. And it's probably going to be millions of lifebirths for me for sure, but there is hope, and we're going to be discussing that in the next, the next few minutes. So in the next verse, Uddhava is also talking about how for the pure devotees anything is possible, because they're so engaged in a devotional service, they're so engaged in their exchanges, loving exchanges with the Lord, from their hearts, that the Lord can give them anything that they ask. It could be dharma, it could be religiosity, as the translation tells us in this purport, I mean in this verse, religiosity, economic development, right, or artha, sense gratification or kama, and liberation, at moksha, right? So for the devotee that is giving his heart out to Krishna and is soaking in the love and the shelter of Krishna, for him Krishna can, give anything that the devotee is asking for. But the devotee prefers not to ask for anything because they don't want anything. They've transcended, any of these material desires. They don't have any of these material desires. All they carry within their hearts is nothing but the love for Krishna. And that in itself, completely satisfies the heart. Yayatma suprasiddhiti. So it completely satisfies the heart. It's not just, a momentary or a transient feeling of satisfaction, but it completely eliminates everything that is inauspicious, and it completely satisfies the soul that is so characteristic of engaging in the loving devotional service of Krishna. So this is the stage that everybody aspires to be. You can look at various examples, right? I mean, there are several examples, but just to think of one or two here, in the interest of time. I mean, even Dhruva Maharaj, as a boy, headed out with so much anger and so much frustration and so much desire and so much, he was humiliated by his stepmother for not being able to, sit on the lap of his own father, you know, and in doing so, he wanted to get something that was even bigger than what his great grandfather had in terms of Lord Brahma's, creation of the universe. He wanted to have something bigger than that because that's what the stepmother basically accused him of. What do you have? You have nothing. You don't have any position. You have to take birth in my womb before you can even aspire to sit on the lap of your father. So he was so upset by that the little boy that he was, but Dhruva was a Kshatriya, right? So his only desire at that point in time was, I need to have something that is bigger and greater, that I can show my stepmother that I am of someone who has, a stature here. I'm not a nobody. And after taking the advice of his mother, he heads out into the forest, right, into the wilderness to meditate upon the Lord. Because she tells him, as your mother, I can tell you the only thing I can do to help you is let you know that if you meditate upon Vishnu, he can give you anything. So off he goes into the woods, right? So we know about Dhruva Maharaj. And what did he do after the completely inconceivable austerities that he goes through and he puts himself through, and he finally attains Vishnu? After that he does get the attendance. He has the darshan of Vishnu, and at that point in time, at that specific point in time, no words come from his mouth. All that anger is gone, all that frustration is gone, all that desire, I want to be this, I want to be that, I want to have something that is bigger and better than my great grandfather, Lord Brahma himself. All of that completely evaporates from his mind. There are no words coming to his tongue. Admittedly, I mean, he was a young boy, but at the same time, even otherwise, he was not able to open his mouth to say even a few words. So the Lord, out of his mercy, as Paramatma, inspires Dhruva Maharaj to speak those wonderful prayers. And in those prayers, Dhruva is only glorifying the Lord. And he says, I came to ask for something, but now I don't need any of that. I see, just having your darshan, just having your appearance in front of me it's completely satisfied my whatever desires I had. And those material desires are completely gone. And here I am standing in front of you and I'm soaking it all in, right? I'm just paraphrasing this, but that's essentially what Dhruva Maharaj is saying. Similarly, other pure devotees also have no other, desires other than serving the Lord from their hearts. That is the only soul, vyavasaya atmika buddhir, right? So that is their one single-minded focus, to serve the Lord. That is basically what they're thinking about all the time. So it is not just artha, not kama, not even moksha. There are, in generally speaking, there are 5 types of liberation that we've, read and we hear constantly. But the devotee doesn't aspire for any of that. Basically, the devotee, like I said, is completely wanting to engage in devotional service. So even liberation, which is a big, 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 big thing for most of us in the material world, where we're saying, hey, we have all of this confusion, we have all of this chaos, we have all of this misery that we have to go through in this material world at some point in time, or not some point in time, but maybe almost all the time. We may want to just escape from this world. We want to escape from all the horrible material circumstances that we're going through and we're being put through. So aspiring for liberation may come very naturally because when someone is put in a very hot room, the person is, able to take it to a certain point or bear with it up to a certain point. And after a while, it becomes too hot. And then the person wants to just get out of that room right away, right? The first thought is, how do I get out of this room? I need some fresh air. Same thing in this material world. Day in and day out, we are going through, anxieties and miseries and circumstances that are constantly challenging us, pulling us in different directions. And we're looking for that, moment of happiness. And we're constantly chasing that illusory moment of happiness. And that is Maya. Maya is constantly enticing us to, giving us a flash here and a flash there and telling us, hey, run after this, run after that. And so we're constantly trying to do that, trying to get ourselves situated in a better place all the time, all the time. And in doing so, we're committing mistakes out of our own ignorance. And Krishna is saying, don't be an ignorant fool, right? And so that's been a lesson for devotees and for everybody in general, right? The question is, how many of us are actually taking that seriously to heart and doing something about it? So even liberation, which may sound like a very logical desire to have, I want to get out of this horrible material world and maybe go move to the higher planets, or even better, move to Vaikunta, where there is no anxiety. By definition, Vaikunta is a place where there is no anxiety. Can we do that? But for a devotee that is engaged in pure devotional service, the taste of pure devotional service, we're told, is so unique and so powerful that even liberation is not something that a devotee aspires for. Like, can you imagine how really, really, really good and how superlative that sense of being with Krishna and engaging in that devotional service and having that loving exchange with Krishna is, that it even liberation pales in comparison. So so here Uddhava is saying, I preferred only to engage in the loving service of your lotus feet. So he's standing there with folded hands and he's saying, this is what I've always been doing, and this is always what I wanted to do. This is what I'm doing, which is really serving, being engaged in your loving service of your lotus feet, Krishna. All right. So with that, that's my initial preamble here, but getting into this, to the to the heart of the lecture here, we're saying Uddhava is such a great devotee, as we know from the scriptures that we're being told, and Krishna loves him. Krishna loves him as well. I mean, the reciprocation is so strong between the two of them. In fact, Krishna even gives Uddhava Gita, right? And what is the essence of Uddhava Gita? The essence is, serving the Lord in is the highest perfection in life. So devotional service is the way to reach Krishna. And see, when you look at how, okay, when Uddhava was sent by Krishna to Vrindavan, and Uddhava is knowing that, he is such a close associate of Krishna, has always been thinking and serving Krishna in his heart. When he reaches Vrindavan and he sees the intensity of love in separation of Krishna exhibited, demonstrated, and experienced by the gopis, he's completely humbled, completely humbled. He was sent there by Krishna as, with a simple message. Please go and let the residents of Vrindavan know that I'm wrapping up my time here and forget me, start thinking less about me and go about your duties. That was meant to be a simple message. But when Uddhava saw, in fact, yesterday Sri Kishore Prabhu described so beautifully how that letter was torn to pieces by the gopis. And every piece was held by a gopi, close to her heart. And the gopis were crying in total separation and total love for Krishna and looking at Uddhava and saying, see, Akrura came here and took Krishna away. Now you're coming here and you're telling us to forget him. How can that even happen? And they start to reminisce. I mean, there are fantastic, beautiful descriptions in Canto 10 and in Canto 11 as well, where the gopis are constantly there. They start to even more talk about and vocalize their pastimes with Krishna. How Krishna did this, how Krishna played the flute, how Krishna sat there. This is how Krishna stood. These how Krishna looked at them, specifically, and all of these things that Krishna, that even the smallest and the smallest of things that resonated with them, that those loving exchanges are things that the gopis are reminiscing about. And when they start describing that, they're actually moving into, they're already in a mellow where they're missing Krishna so much. And on top of that, they're discussing those wonderful pastimes when Krishna was in Vrindavan with them and they were engaging with Krishna personally. And all of these things were coming to bear, in a way that it was causing more and more, a flow of emotion, a strong flow of emotion from their hearts. And Uddhava was completely baffled. He had never expected something like that. And then he is so moved by their emotion and their love for Krishna that he starts to sing praises in terms of, their devotion. And he very openly declares that, the gopis are the highest in terms of their level of love for Krishna. They are the highest devotees. And what happens? Uddhava was supposed to go there and give this simple message, and the message is not simple anymore. The message is not simple anymore. Now, all of a sudden, it's like moving, the Himalayan mountains, because he's seeing these wonderful devotees. He's seeing these gopis, the residents of Vrindavan as well. They're so in love with Krishna and in that mood of separation. Now, how is he going to break this news, right? And so he's having a hard time. And having broken the news, how does he console them? To give them at least some solace, some comfort in terms of what it means to be able to still remember Krishna and be able to hold Krishna in their hearts, even though he is not physically present. So that becomes a Herculean task for Uddhava now. All of a sudden, the simple message he was supposed to give and relay to the gopis is no longer a simple message. It's a very, very difficult and a very heavy message to convey to the gopis. So then, in turn, Uddhava is not only baffled initially, and then he's in total appreciation when he sees that pure love, that intensity of love, that he ends up actually, staying for several months in Vrindavan. The Srimad Bhagavatam talks about how, Uddhava came with a simple message, was supposed to relay the message and head back. But what happened? He ended up staying in Vrindavan to experience that love. He also wanted to experience that love and be in the association of the gopis, and ended up being there in Vrindavan for several months. In fact, in the 10th canto, text 4758, and I'll read it out here. Um, Eta param tano bhruto bhuvi gopavadho Govinda eva Nikalatmani Ruda Bhava Gopavadhva Govinda eva Nikalatmani Ruda Bhava Vanchanti Yadbhavabhyo Munayo Vayamcha Kim Brahma Janmabhir Ananta Katha Rasasya. So the key operative words here are Ruda Bhava, the perfected ecstatic love And the ecstatic attraction that the gopis had for Krishna is what is mentioned here. This is the kind of attraction one needs to inculcate for Krishna. We all need to aspire for that because this is a form of bhakti, right? Now, what is this kind of bhakti that the Lord is expecting? The Lord has no expectations per se, but it is that bhakti which attracts even Krishna. Now, the gopis are completely absorbed in Krishna all the time, right? And like I said, seeing all of this, Uddhava is singing glories of the gopis. And he declares very, very clearly, emphatically, that this is the highest perfection. Gopa Vadva Govinda, Govinda Eva Nikhalatmani Ruda Bhava. That the gopis have achieved this, even in these material bodies, to be able to develop such ecstatic Ruda Bhava or love for Krishna, that ecstatic attraction for Krishna. So we all want to experience that kind of love for Krishna, and Uddhava is expressing that as well. And and he says, what is the use of even having the lifetime of Brahma if we don't realize or if we don't get to a point where we are experiencing that kind of ecstatic attraction for Krishna? And think about it. We've come through, if not billions or trillions, millions and millions of births and lifetimes over and over and over and over again. And here we are, we're still there, and we're still, and I can speak for myself. I still don't have the taste. I simply don't have the taste. I am trying and trying, but that trying is probably not even scratching the surface, leave alone denting the surface, right, of my spiritual journey. So, what to speak of lifetimes of Brahma? I mean, we know Brahma lives for a very, very, very long time. The lifetime of Brahma is 311 trillion years. 311 trillion years. And that is comprised of 1,000 cycles of these yugas, right? That is the Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapar Yuga, and Kali Yuga. Going through that one cycle in itself is a long, long, long time. What to speak of 1,000 such cycles, and those 1,000 cycles are just one day of Brahma. And then there is a similar 1,000 cycles that comprise the nighttime of Brahma. And Brahma lives up to 100 such celestial years. So that equates to, if you do the math, it equates to about 311 trillion years. And then Brahma's replaced by, because Brahma is a role that is filled time and again by pure devotees who qualify to be in that role. So, what to speak of several lifetimes of Brahma? Even Brahma has a finite lifetime. And what to speak of such finite, uh, extremely long, it's kind of strange to say finite, finitely infinite lifetimes, because 311 trillion years is something that is beyond even anyone's comprehension here. And we're talking about such long lifetimes. And if you're not able to realize or get the taste for the love of taste of love for Krishna, then it's absolutely useless, and that's what Uddhava is saying. So in the same verse, Uddhava is also saying, how do I reach that stage of Ruda Bhava? Ruda Bhava, as I said, is that perfection of ecstatic, loving attraction. And the Lord is so merciful. He's so merciful in the way he reciprocates. Even the slight test that we do from our side, the Lord is ready to reciprocate. So even the simplest things that we do, even in ignorance, results in highest perfection. It leads to that. It's basically taking baby steps in the right direction. We may do things that are that we may not even know in even the slightest service that lamp that we light or the flower that we pick for Krishna and we place it, on the altar, or we go to the temple or do something, even the smallest of the smallest things that we do for Krishna is never ignored by Krishna. In fact, in Canto 11, Krishna says, na sadhyati mam yoga, right? And I'll read that out to you here. It's Srimad Bhagavatam's Canto 11, text, chapter 14, text 20, where Krishna is telling Uddhava, he's saying, na sadhyati mam yoga, na, na sankyam dharma udhaya, na swadhyayas tapastyago, yatha bhaktir mamorjita. He's saying, no one can conquer me by any yoga, by any mental speculation, or even studying the Vedas or engaging in tapasya, right? Or even performing sacrifices. They're doing something, but nothing can conquer me, but only by engaging in pure devotional service am I conquered. So he is a Bhakta Vatsalya, right? He will do anything for his bhakta. It is bhakti. It is not the mental speculation or performing this mind control that is professed by some of these so-called spiritual leaders. Right? They are basically misleading people by giving the impression that hey, you can get away from all of this material chaos by controlling your mind and by stopping desires altogether, right? That is simply not possible. It is not possible. And Krishna is saying that very, very clearly. It is not any of these things that attract me. It is your bhakti, it is your love for me that attracts me. And when you do that, I am yours. Krishna is saying, I am yours. And here he is. I mean, Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. He's not just an individual that is here today and gone tomorrow. He is the original source. He is the source of everything that's been created and that will be created. If you think that our boss is important when he's walking into the room and we have to give him respect, his boss's boss, I mean your boss's boss, is even more important. And then it finally leads up to the CEO of the company. And then all of these CEOs of the company have to report into the board, and they have to offer their respects to their board. And the board in turn is respecting the street where the shareholders are putting in their money and so on, and they're investing. And so each one is reporting that way all the way up, and it goes all the way to the administrators of the city, the state, and finally even up to the country itself. So the president of the United States is that single most important position in the entire country, and perhaps throughout the world as well. The U.S. being one of the leaders in the modern world. So even that person has to acknowledge the superiority of the Lord, the supreme position of the Lord, right? And so we're talking about not just this universe, but all the universes around. And Krishna is that person, is that supreme person. He is the supreme person for all of the universes and all of the planets within these universes and all of the living beings within those planets. He has created them. He is the supreme personality who has dominion over all of those living entities. Millions and millions and millions and millions and billions of all of these living entities. And that person is saying that I am yours. Engage in devotional service and I am yours. Right? Because his heart is so, he's not simply called Bhagavan, right? He has all of these opulences in full. And to be able to reciprocate and open his heart and give his love to all of us is one of those. I mean, we cannot love anyone so openly, even with the person that you love the most. Even that will have some conditions, or it will have some restrictions, or it will have some reservation at some point. depending on the circumstance. Krishna is not like that. Without any conditions, Krishna says, just come to me and I am yours. And there are several such, stories of, his pastimes where he's demonstrated that. There was one wonderful devotee who was serving Chaitanya Mahaprabhu through other senior devotees, and during one of his name was Ghosh. If I remember right, it was I forget his first name, Gopal Ghosh, I think, or Govind Ghosh. I forget what it was, but basically he was serving the Lord. Mahaprabhu was visiting, during his travels, and he was passing through this village, and so Ghosh had an opportunity to serve Mahaprabhu. And when and Mahaprabhu was literally making every place that he visited into Vaikuntha. The whole atmosphere was completely changed. People were completely rejoicing. They were feeling so light, free of anxiety, and feeling so nice about being there and in the presence of Mahaprabhu. But Ghosh also noticed that Mahaprabhu, as he was resting, it would be nice for me to be able to offer some foodstuffs, maybe offer him a refresher. And so, he offered this fruit. Yeah, it was the haritaki fruit. And by the way, that was Govinda Ghosh, not Gopal Ghosh, but Govinda Ghosh. And so he takes this fruit, which is considered to be, a very refreshing kind of a fruit. Govind Ghosh offered that to Mahaprabhu, and Mahaprabhu said, "Hey, how did you manage to get this, exquisite Haritaki fruit, which is such a special fruit, and it's such short notice? It's not readily available. It's not easily available. How are you able to do it?" And Govind Ghosh, in his humility, said, Mahaprabhu, I was storing this for you, thinking I would, offer it to you at the right moment. So, I was actually preserving this for you. It was saved for you. And he meant it with all humility, meant it with all love for Mahaprabhu. But Mahaprabhu, see the interesting pastime there, because Mahaprabhu turned around and, um, admonished him and scolded him, chastised him, and said, "You're a sannyasi. For God's sakes, how could you store something? You know that sannyasis are not meant to keep anything to themselves. They're not supposed to save uh, especially material things with them and hold on to them. So how did you do that?" So he admonished him, and after chastising him, and poor Govind Ghosh takes it as a blessing, but nevertheless he's heartbroken, but he continues to hold Mahaprabhu in the highest of regard. He holds him not only in regard, but he is also, he says, I need to cleanse myself. I must have done something terribly, terribly wrong. So I need to cleanse myself. So Govind Ghosh heads off to the river to have a bath and cleanse himself. And as he's doing that and he's praying and remembering the Lord, a piece of very black, dark wood comes and through the waves of the river, and then it comes and hits him or touches him on his body. What is our first response? Normally, what we do is when we see things like that, we just moved away, and that's what Govind Ghosh does. He moves that piece of wood away, that chunk of wood which is so blackened. And then later that night, Govind Ghosh has a dream, and Mahaprabhu tells him, please go back to the river tomorrow and retrieve that piece of wood. Convert into a deity. And so the first thing in the morning when Govind Ghosh wakes up, breaks out of his dream, he realizes, this was some kind of a message that was given to him. So he runs to the river, and sure enough, that chunk of wood, that block of wood is still there floating in the river. So he's able to, retrieve it, and then it is carved into a beautiful, beautiful deity. And then Govinda Ghosh starts to worship that deity with all his heart on a regular basis. And that way, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is giving Govinda Ghosh his personal association. So Govinda Ghosh becomes very, very attracted to that deity form of Mahaprabhu, and he continues to worship, with all his heart until life happens. He loses his son tragically, and then he shortly thereafter he loses his wife. So he goes into, much better, and he gets into this mood of depression. And with that depression, he starts his devotional services start to falter, and he stops, worshiping the Lord. I mean, the deity form. But then see the reciprocation of Mahaprabhu. He again appears to him in his dream, and he says, I will do the Pinda Pradhana, they say, right? When, those prayers, those samskaras that are offered to the ones that have departed this world, right? The relatives who've done that, who've departed this world. So that Pinda Pradhana, he says, I will, make sure that that still happens. You don't have to worry about that. Just continue to worship me. So then he brings Govind Ghosh back on track, and Govind Ghosh starts to, worship the Lord more. And it continues till one fine day he becomes old, he departs. But the beauty is, the worship and the Pinda Pradhana is happening even till today, is what I'm being told, is what I heard in one of the lectures. And that pastime is basically still being enacted even as we speak, even 500 years after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's advent. So that's how Krishna reciprocates infinitely with, when someone gives him that love. And it's not the quantity of love, it is that quality of love. If that intensity is pure and it is there, that even Krishna will, notice that and reciprocate. Now that's what it's all about. Krishna says, I'm a Bhakta Vatsalya. I will reciprocate. I love my devotees. Nothing and no one is better than my devotee. So that's an amazing pastime. And you think about the other one that comes to mind is Shivanand Sen, right? Shivanand Sen was given the responsibility. Again, he was also a very close associate of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is a contemporary. And his responsibility, one of the services that he's known for, is that he would take these hundreds of devotees across from Navadvip to Jagannath Puri. So that, it was like a pilgrimage where these devotees would then go to Puri and see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Gambira. Right, Gambira is a small village, southeast of the Jagannath temple in Puri, and Gambira still exists. So this is what Shivanand Sen would do. And in those days, there were no Teslas, there were not even motor vehicles. So people went by road on foot. And it would take them a long time. It would take them almost a month or so just to go from Navadvip to Puri, just one way. And people would make that pilgrimage on an annual basis, and Shivanand Sen would be responsible for guiding them, for ensuring security, ensuring their safety, ensuring their comfort, ensuring that these devotees had meals and were taken care of along the way. And along the way, a dog joined them on one such occasion. There was a dog that joined, and many of you have heard of this pastime, but it's so beautiful because it tells us so much about how Krishna reciprocates. So this dog joins the party, and for several days is with the party, and Shivanand Sen is feeding the dog and taking care of the dog like he would and like he was any of those devotees as well. So he would feed the dog, making sure that the dog was kept, well taken care of throughout that journey. And then suddenly one day, the dog disappears. And when that happens, Shivanand Sen is like totally distraught. He's like, "What happened? Did I do something wrong?" And he sends out, search parties to look for the dog. Maybe it wandered away. Maybe it is dying of hunger in some place. So he takes it out himself so hard. He feels terrible. He feels completely responsible because he's given that responsibility, and that is his service. So it doesn't matter if it is a human being or if it's a dog, even, right? For a devotee, they see Krishna in every living entity, right? In every living being. And so Shyamanand Sen is completely distraught, and he even fasts for the rest of the journey. And then when they all reach Gambira, and Gambira is a place where, just a small sidebar here, it is where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is, his residence, his quarters are so tiny and so humble, so austere that you couldn't even stand up erect without hitting your head. And many a time, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would smash his face against the walls in a mood of separation because his love for Krishna that he was experiencing. So people had to guard the place to ensure that he's not hurting himself, right? And so there were constantly guards there to take care of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And so, okay, so back to Shivanand Sen, right? And when Shivanand Sen and his party finally arrived there, the first thing he notices is that dog that was missing is right there by the side of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I mean, we don't know who that special dog is or was. Maybe there was a separate pastime of, for how the dog ended up being the dog. But the important takeaway here is that, just by being in the presence of pure devotees, just by accepting prasadam, just by being there, on the dog could have been anywhere. It could have been eating something else in some other place. It could have just been wandering from place to place, but it decided to stick with the party that was on pilgrimage. And the several days that the dog was with those devotees, that in itself was able to give it that level of purity, and that didn't go unnoticed by Mahaprabhu. Even that was reciprocated so beautifully. So the dog was saved, and dog was given the special association, the association that we all would love to have of Mahaprabhu. And Mahaprabhu was able to do that. I know I'm running out of time here, but let me speed up a little bit. But the important takeaway here, if you haven't got it already, is that Krishna draws us towards him through the process of bhakti. Let me repeat that again. So Krishna draws us towards him through the process of bhakti. Now, when Prabhupada and my spiritual master Guru Maharaj, His Holiness Romapad Maharaj, just recently mentioned in one of the lectures when he was here in Naperville, just before the inauguration, I believe, where he mentioned how all his young disciples, the early disciples of Prabhupada, gathered together, and Prabhupada was to give this first public discourse. They were all huddled together, wondering. They were all curious. They were all wondering, what is Prabhupada going to say? How is he going to say it? What is the reaction going to be? This is a Western audience that's never been exposed to something like this. So what is Prabhupada going to say? And what did Prabhupada say? In his grim voice, he said that I've come here not to tell you something new, but to share something that or to revive what you've forgotten. So that's how he broke the ice, and that's what resonated with so many of those in attendance there, and of course, it only strengthened the love that the disciples had for Srila Prabhupada even by then, right? So that was a beautiful message. It's about bhakti that is within us. Prabhupada is saying it's already there. It's not something artificial that we need to learn, something that we need to, bring into ourselves and make ourselves aware. No, it is more about remembering, what we already have, bringing that out, opening our hearts, and being able to then be able to experience, that bhakti, and doing that without any ulterior motives, without any material desires. Anya bhilashita shunya, jnana anavratam, right? Anukulena Krishna, right? So, from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Rupa Goswami says that having that bhakti within us and being able to give that to Krishna, that is our offering to Krishna, being able to give that offering of love to Krishna in itself without any mental speculation, without any motive, without any material motives or otherwise, right? Without any expectation in return, is so attractive to Krishna that Krishna is bound by that love. As a Bhakta Vatsalya, he is bound by that love. Okay, so here's the next key takeaway, right? Because we're running out of time here. So naturally, Prabhupada says, naturally Krishna bestows on his devotee more mercy. And Prabhupada also says, by Krishna giving that mercy, he is also giving the capacity for the devotee to accept that through service. That mercy is coming in the form of service. That is the causeless mercy. So, okay, are you ready for the next big takeaway? Right? So, another key takeaway is that as long as we're doing so, we're getting this causeless mercy in the form of service from Krishna. But if we accept that service and we do those services with the right consciousness, it's not about me, or mine, but instead, doing it selflessly for expressing our true love for Krishna, right? Then that mercy becomes even more productive, in the sense it becomes even more prominent, and Krishna is showering us with more mercy. And what is that more mercy? It is more services. So one may think, oh, for karma, it'll be like, why do I want to break my head? Why do I have to, work so hard? Why do I have to have sleepless nights? Why do I have to do this or that? It becomes a chore, right? It's more of a physical strain, and the what should I say? The resistance to perform any additional services. Oh, I did some cooking for Krishna yesterday. Why do you want me to do, again today? Or why do I have to do this or that for Krishna again today? Yesterday I did it. That's enough, more than enough. Or I went to the temple yesterday. Why do I need to go to the temple today? Things like that. So that's the common mindset that we have in this material realm. But a devotee recognizes that this causeless mercy is coming from Krishna in the form of a service. So as we perform our services with an open heart, these services lead to more mercy coming from Krishna. That's Krishna's reciprocation. That mercy does not happen whimsically. It does not happen to any Tom, Dick, and Harry. Krishna is giving us, he's awarding us that special, special, special mercy, which nobody else is getting other than devotees, right? Who are also engaged in similar devotional service. How many of us realize that? We need to hit that pause button and think to ourselves, if I'm being given a service and the way it happens is it's coming from another devotee. It could be a senior devotee, it could be a Madhyama Adhikari, it could be, a Kanishta Adhikari also can come and tell us. But this is service. And sometimes these services could come to us in a way that may not even be in a pleasing manner. People are running helter and skelter. We recently, just last week, we went through the inauguration. We went through so many services in making that happen. And some of those services were dealt with or given to us under the most tense situations, things that we hadn't thought of, things that were not going the way we had planned to do, or something like that. But the services were there; they were given to us. They did not go to somebody else, but there were certain services that were given to us. And so our role was to play and play that role by performing those services, completing those services, not with the intention that it is me, it is I that is doing performing the service, but more about performing these services to please the deities, Sri Radha Shyam Sundar in this case, right? Pleasing Krishna. That is the service mindset. But more importantly is recognizing that that service is so unique, it is so special, it is invaluable because we are the chosen ones for that particular service. It's not happening randomly, but it is Krishna's plan. It is Krishna's plan. And we had some discussions the other day, the subtle differences in terms of Krishna's plan versus Krishna's sanction. So some of us want to say, oh, I want to do this service and this service only. And Krishna can, reciprocate by saying, okay, fine, if that's the service that you want to do it. Krishna is so merciful. And that is Krishna's sanction. But there are certain services that come and land in our lap. We may feel like we're not qualified at all. Like for me, for instance, I'm hardly eloquent. I can hardly speak a few words. And Krishna is giving me this opportunity to speak a few words, to be able to, it's an inspiration for myself. And I'm hoping that I can help connect not only myself, but everyone who's listening here to, in some form, in the slightest, smallest way, back to Guru and Krishna. So this is special mercy that is coming to us. These are the kinds of services that it's a part of Krishna's plan. And with this mercy comes more services. And with more services comes more mercy. And you see how that works? Yes. So it is through service that we develop bhakti, right? And with more service, our bhakti gets deeper and deeper and deeper, right? So if you're doing it from the right point of or right sense of consciousness, in the right consciousness, our bhakti will get deeper, right? And once that happens, we are away from the limelight. We are no longer in the center of that attention, but rather Krishna is in the center of that attention. And we're able to serve Krishna so nicely. It becomes so beautiful. It becomes inspiring. And everybody, you don't have to even tell people, this is what I did. People can see that happen. People can actually experience that feeling of satisfaction that you're experiencing just by being in your presence. Have you ever sat with Barahari Prabhu in a kirtan? I personally, like many of us here, have sat right next to him in a kirtan, and you feel it. You can actually experience the bliss. He does transport you to another world, a spiritual world. And you can feel it. That's because it's coming from within. He doesn't have to say it. Come with me, I'm going to take you to XYZ or this destination. No, he doesn't even have to say it. Just in his kirtan, he is so absorbed in his kirtan. It's coming out so sweetly. You can feel every word coming out from his heart. You can feel it. He doesn't have to say it. He's chanting the holy names, and he's chanting it with such love and absorption that is so attractive. And not only attractive, it is contagious. It is actually contagious. You can actually feel it. That is what a pure devotee does. That is what our spiritual master does for us. Our spiritual master, by initiating us, by us giving us an opportunity to take shelter, or his shelter, we are being given that infinite faith, that pure faith that our spiritual master has for Krishna. He's giving it to us. How does he do it? By giving us services. His instructions are services that we need to take seriously. And when we take and do these services with an open heart, we end up getting the benefits. Although we're not looking as devotees, we are not supposed to look for benefits, right? These are products that are, this is the reciprocation of Krishna that we receive in the form of Krishna's mercy in giving us more service, and we continue to stay in the shelter of Guru and Krishna. So, in summary, we need to be eager, we need to be single mindedly focused in our service to Krishna, no matter what we do. Yat karoshi yad asnasi yad Jehosi dadasi. So Krishna says, whatever you do, whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer, whatever tapasya you're doing, do it as an offering unto me. And when you do that, you are free from all these material bonds and bondage, and you will certainly attain me, Krishna says in chapter 9. And that is absolutely the way we should look at it. That is the way we should inculcate our service mindedness, and we should serve Krishna. So, with that, I'm sorry I took up so much time. I thought this was going to be a very short one. Honestly, I wasn't well prepared. And in fact, following yesterday's lecture by Sri Kishore Prabhu, who described, his experience of being in the Kalyanam of Balaji and Padmavati in the Tirupati temple was so beautiful. I mean, I felt like I was there. And it was really, really nice. It was a tough act to follow, but this has been very purifying for me, and I thank you all, for giving me your time. And if I've said something that doesn't make sense or was said incorrectly, please do forgive me, and feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. And that way I learn something, and if I am able to spend a few minutes to think through it and be able to respond to you, that would give me a chance to deepen my learning and my service mindedness as well. Thank you again. Have a wonderful rest of your week. Vancha kalpataru bhishcha kripa sindhubhyev cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Sri Krishna. Thank you so much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.